Welcome to this Thursday live stream, chill session. I am Marcus Winnie, and I am a senior creature character artist. And in this live stream, we're gonna have a look at how to composite inside of Photoshop. Whilst I take some questions, I hope everyone's had a good weekend or week, sorry, and weekend, obviously. Um, before I get actually started inside of Photoshop, I just wanted to talk a little bit about composition and some other concept artists that I admire that I'm trying to emulate through their artwork, through my artwork, their style. But before we do that, I'm just going to do a bit of shilling quick. So tonight's live stream is a Photoshop live stream. I am using Photoshop. If you want, you can become a member on my YouTube channel. Let me just grab the membership tab. So you can become a YouTube member for $4.99 a month, and you'll get access to all the other archived live streams. Before I go any further, can everybody hear me? If you can, please just leave a thumbs up in the chat, and I'll be able to see whether or not my microphone's working. So, as I was mentioning before, you can become a member of my YouTube channel, and you'll be able to grab all the archived live streams as well as the extra long live streams that I'm doing on certain Tuesdays, every other Tuesday as well. And you can also become a Patreon, where you'll be able to get access to the live streams, tutorials, brushes, exclusive tutorials, and also long videos as well. There's a lot more on my Patreon, but those are for more the diehard want to sort of see everything and have exclusive content on there. Alternatively, you can go onto my online stores. You grab the banner quick. So you can go onto the online stores as well. So Flip Normals, Gumroad, ArtStation, and ZBrush. At the moment, I'm having a sale on ZBrush, and it's 30% off until the end of February, and it's just an automatic coupon at the end of the till. So once you've got everything you want, you'll just take 30% off the total. But you'll be able to grab the tutorials, the brushes, and also the high poly models that I use in my time-lapse videos. There's a bunch of those in there as well. So now that I've finished shilling, just going to turn off these banners. 1 second. And this one, because I forgot last time. And I'm just going to put some music on. Give me 1 second. I wish I had a producer for this, but I don't. There we are. Just going to put that on there. So I'm going to share screen. I'm just going to run you through some of the conceptual side of stuff and the compositing side of stuff before we actually get into Photoshop. I just want to run through some basic stuff, really. So let's just get into this. Cool. I don't know if you can all see that. That is my... oh, I've still got the banner up. 1 second. There we are. So inside of PureRef here, I've just collected a few examples of artwork that I'm really like, and I've also added the URL codes or the website codes that you can go and you can grab the videos and also check out the artist's work. I'll just put this in the chat quick. This one in the chat. And this one as well. So the first one is an artist by the name of Luca Nemo Lato. I hope I said that right. But anyway, he's a great artist. And I particularly like this one because it is actually a tutorial. These 4 screenshots at the top here are a tutorial on how to create concept art for a film character, or in this case, a Superman or superhero character. And the one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about with this particular one is that not everything, once you've done your composition, your model inside of ZBrush, if you're going to be a concept artist, not everything has to be done inside of ZBrush. A lot of the stuff can be done inside of Photoshop, especially the fine detailed stuff and the overall final composition. So you can see here on the left-hand side, this is kind of like a work in progress. He's taken a suit or a model, sorry, of the human anatomy into Photoshop, and he's actually painted all this on before he actually sculpted the design inside of ZBrush, and then taken it back into Photoshop and added extra details. So as you can see here, with things like the knuckles on the glove, where you can see there, he's literally just taken a photo and used a photo to add those knuckles in. And that's okay to do because it's a concept. It's never going to be a final model, so you don't have to worry too much about sculpting every little bit of detail. You can get away with sculpting very little detail and doing a lot of the work inside of Photoshop. Now, the thing about these artists I'm showing you, they are skilled in both 3D and Photoshop. You have to have a relatively good knowledge of Photoshop in order to become a concept artist, or not just Photoshop, but art in general, like lighting the character, composition of the frame or the image that you want to portray the character. So it's a very difficult thing to get right. And a lot of these artists would sort of start off as 2D concept artists or game artists, like concept artists, and then they dive into 3D. I think what I've done is I've gone the opposite way. I'm going from 3D to 2D, and I'm trying to catch up with them, and that's just how I've felt comfortable doing it, really. But generally, you'll find that these artists will be people who know a lot about 2D composition and lighting and shadows and all that sort of jazz. So yeah, some other examples here. So I just picked this one here. The face on this one is just a projection, a texture projection onto a normal, like a model of a face inside of ZBrush or something. And then the actual piece that's modeled is the helmet, and the same thing here as well for this one. And you can see the reason you need to know composition, sort of Photoshop, and how to draw and light and shadow your character is because you can see with these two images here, it's the same model or the same composition, but he's actually drawn, I think he's drawn the face on the second one down here and just used the first one as the base and then just tweaked it to make a different sort of style face. So when you're doing concept work, you have to be on your feet the whole time, and you have to be able to sort of step back from your model or your composition or your artwork and be like, yep, that didn't work. The director wants to see something completely different. Let's quickly change it and then get another one out. When you're a concept artist, you're constantly spewing artwork out until you get it right or until the director is happy. I had the similar experience when I worked on the film Munja. Let me just grab it quick. I think everyone knows this one. I think I've talked about it quite a few times, but I'll just show you this project quick. Just grab it. Oops. So just going to minimize this window. So for this film, Munja, which is an Indian film, I was asked to come up with this design for this character because of the skills that I had shown in my sort of portfolio that I've got. And you can see on this particular frame here, there was more than 10. I just picked the best 10. But we went through a lot of iterations, and so being able to adjust the iterations and to step back and not worry about what we had before and do a completely different one afterwards, and not being too precious about things when it's in the concept stage, really helped. When it gets more into the final piece, which is this one here, then you'll start going in and tweaking small pieces. But at the very beginning, you're going to have a lot of variations in your designs, really. So just wanted to show that quick. Don't worry, we will get to the part where we go into Photoshop. So, if you have any questions about this stuff, then please put it in the comment section. This is a free talking sort of stream, so you can ask me anything that I'm going on about here tonight. And then the next one I just want to point out is an artist by the name of Gerard S. Marantz. I can't remember. I can't say his name, sorry. But yeah, he's another really good artist. I admire his work a lot. In fact, a lot of the key shot artwork or the full character artwork is done using his techniques. I found a tutorial online. Can't remember where it was, but I will put it in the Discord when I find it again. But he basically runs you through how to render in Keyshot and then take that Keyshot render into Photoshop and then composite it, just like you see here with these ones here. In fact, it was something like this creature that it's one of these creatures that he composited using Keyshot and Photoshop very quickly, and it came out looking really good. I highly recommend you go and check out his ArtStation. I'll just put this in the chat. Yeah, definitely go and check that one out as well. He's a little bit of a legend when it comes to the film industry, and I think he's done a few games as well. So I want to go over now and just show you some examples of what I've done in the past that sort of mirrors or mimics this style of artwork from these two artists. So quite a while back, I decided to create a genie from Aladdin, but instead of using a 3D face, like sculpting the face, because it would take way too long to get the realistic look of Robbie Williams, I think it's Robbie Williams. It'll take so long to get that perfection of his face. I decided to just Photoshop his face on, and in the realms of concept art, this is perfectly fine to do. You'll see this done a lot in film. Because they just don't have time to sit there and sculpt the perfect face of the actor. Sorry about that. Just have to drink a bit of water. Just going to take 1 second to answer a question quick. So I got Joseph Bonkowski, one of my top members, says, where did you get those cool fake skin textures that you're using in your videos? Fake skin textures, you mean the ones that I overlap and project onto the model whilst we'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to it. There's a few online. What I'll do is I'll put that in the Discord channel, those images, and you can just download those after the stream once it's done. But yeah, so just showing you here, I did a couple of test renders using a different angle of his face, and also manipulated it a little bit, and it came out all right. I thought it was looking really good until I decided I'm not going to change his face completely. I'm just going to manipulate it so that it fit the model. And it's actually worked really well. And then all you got to do is add a bit of hair by painting on the hair, a little bit of subsurface scattering, which is the sort of the bleeding of the light through your skin, and then just add a background. And I eventually came out this sort of nice composition of what I think would have been a great genie for Aladdin, but yeah, unfortunately he died and we didn't get a chance to see his comeback, unfortunately. Got one here from Achraf Balson. I think you're one of the new members, I believe. This stream will be on your channel later. Yes, it will. It'll be put to private. What I'll do is I'll leave it up for the rest of the night, and at 9 o'clock my time in the morning, I'll put it to membership only. So if you want, you can join and rewatch the stream. So some other examples, quick. I did a version of Venom when it was very popular, and I decided to again use a photo of the actor's face and then sculpt the body and then try to blend it together inside of Photoshop. And it came out like this. So I did a couple of tests with the inside of Photoshop up here, and then I started to manipulate it to fit the body better. It's actually really fun to do, and it makes your work look more professional if you can get it right or make it look right. But yeah, that was that one. And then I went completely crazy, and I decided to do a mech. So a sort of I think this is a battle Alita Battle Angel, I believe it's called. I think I saw that film, and I decided I want to make a concept of how The Rock would have looked if he was more mech than human. And so I decided to design this one with the keeping in mind the sort of face pose that I had of The Rock. And so everything on here is sculpted apart from his head again. But yeah, I think it came out all right. I think I'm going to do a few more of these this year and put some other celebrities in sort of the sort of thing. Maybe the Hulk or something like that. I don't know. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly show you how you can use Photoshop and ZBrush to create a composition like this. And now I'm going to show you very quickly good and bad composition, because I've seen a lot of good and bad, and don't worry, these are all my artworks, so I can scrutinize these as much as I like without offending anybody, hopefully. But yeah, so on the bad side, you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but it's just really, they're quite bad. And this was me practicing at the very beginning of my sort of journey into concept work. And what I did was I didn't think about the composition very well. So as you can see here, these ones at the top are all sort of busts. So the first thing you notice is that there's a lot of space around the outside of the characters, right? So there's a lot of dead space, and I think that is not great. You should actually have, if you're going to do a portrait, you're going to have to put it into portrait. So if I just quickly draw this out, grab the draw button. So for this one here, this version of Rogue that I made, the overall design came out looking all right. It was just the fact that there was too much on either side of her of dead space. So if I was to redo this, I would have actually maybe focus more on her and cut out all this dead space. All this dead space does nothing for your image, right? Well, actually, all this dead space don't do anything for your image, and that's the problem I see with quite a few beginner artists. They might not know how composition works when it comes to sort of doing it inside of Photoshop. But we'll touch on that when we go into Photoshop in a minute. It's not like a major fault that you do. It's just something to maybe work on a little bit. So same thing for this guy. If we just come over here, you can see, again, a lot of dead space on either side. And if I was to actually crop this properly, I would actually put the cut out part of it. Remember, you don't have to show everything when you're doing your models. Even though you've modeled a lot of your character, you don't have to show everything in the final piece. You can really zoom in on what you want to show off, and I think that's what you should do. You should zoom in on the parts that are really good, and maybe if there is something good here, it doesn't fit the composition, don't worry about cutting it out, because it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Same thing here. I would cut this so that it's framed nicely like that. Of course, it gets a bit more difficult when you have a full character creature. The only thing that I would do with this one is maybe add an actual background. So add in some rocks, maybe a sort of scene. Giving your character a scene to stand in actually helps with the overall story that you're trying to portray with your character. Also, it also gives you a bit of scale as well. You know, if you want to have a spider that's really big, like let's say this one is, how are you going to know if it's not got anything in the scene to show you the proportions, right? So what you want to do is you want to add little objects, maybe like like a rock here to show, or a human skull even, to show how big this character is in this world or in the concept that you're trying to make. So, keeping it landscape for this kind of creatures is fine. So over the past few years, I've been trying to learn and learn and learn, and I've come up with some, I would say, good. Some people would say they still need work, but these are better examples of composition. So starting at the top left here, you can see I've got hardly any background or hardly any blank space behind him. It's mostly filled with the head, right? So that's the main focus of the character. And then anything that was down here has just been cut off like that and hidden by clouds or cut away completely. And then we're just focusing on this area here. And then for the same thing for here, this one, you can tell that the main focus is right here, just exactly where I want the audience to look at. And anything on the other sides is either blurred out or painted in very roughly, so it doesn't actually affect the eyes from seeing what it should be seeing. You shouldn't drag the eyes over here or here. It should always be smack bang in the middle there. In cases of massive characters, I did a Godzilla, as you can see, and again, the focus is the body, right? The focus is this piece right here. I've even added little trees and a river or sea, and also some waves crashing here to show scale of this creature. I think in other images of this, I have actually little birds flying as well that can show scale of how big this guy is compared to the birds flying around him. And also, you notice that the tail cuts off at the end here. It's because I couldn't fit it in, but I thought to myself, I need to be able to show this character off. So I'm just going to cut that off there. Everyone knows what the tail looks like anyway. So we're trying to focus on this main section of the body. Now, in other renders, you can manipulate it so that you have more of the tail in the composition. If I just quickly... Oops. I'm actually going to grab that one. I'm just going to minimize this. So if I go to my portfolio here, I'll just show you the Godzilla. There he is. So you see, this is the one I just showed you, right? But then I also had a version where I zoomed in. And then I took another image render of the back of him. And this one I could actually get the tail in, you see? So now we can see how big he is from the back, and you can sort of see the scales we're working with, this character. And again, from another angle. And then you can have a nice sort of character sheet of what your final render could look like, or your final model could look like. I'm just gonna pull this up. And yeah, so it's all about making the main product or the main piece of your composition the focal point. Okay, so don't worry about having massive amounts of space around the character and what's going on in the background stuff. None of that matters when you're doing a character art or concept art. It's all about focusing on your final monster or creature or character, right? So with that being said, I'm going to close this or minimize this. So, take a swig of water quick, and I'll just answer a few questions quick. So we got a question here saying, from Joseph saying, is that possible that you will put this Godzilla into a Tuesday long stream or on Patreon long videos? Unfortunately, that Godzilla was done way before I actually started to record my artwork. I think it was done a year before I did the recording of my process. And so it was a very old model that I took into Keyshot, and I re-rendered to make it look brand new or fresh. I wanted to test myself and see whether or not I could make something that was really old sculpt and really sort of basic, and make it look like something that could be in a sort of portfolio for a Godzilla film, like rendered and made nice. So unfortunately, I can't show the time lapse for that because I don't have one. So yeah, it's Cryptic Visionary saying, yo, hello. Nice to see you again. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is one of the old versions of my models that I had, or time-lapse videos that I had. A creature I designed in my spare time, and it was just a bust. So I didn't want to go any further down than the sort of torso area, because I'm just going to focus on what's going on around here, right? And so once, I'm not going to show you how I did all the rendering stuff. That stuff's still to come. This is just about how to composite what I have inside of Photoshop, and maybe give some tips on how to do it my way, or some things that I do now that I didn't do before. So I'm constantly learning, and so it's always going to be updating your skills, basically. So first thing I do is I bring in the base render, then I'll do a bunch of renders for materials inside ZBrush, or matte materials that I have inside ZBrush, and those are just these sort of renders that are stacked on top of each other. And then I'll have a base color, so this is just flat color. Just got a question here from Joseph. Is the order of materials matters? No, the orders don't matter. I just do this way because I've done it for so long this way, and it just works for me. You don't have to do it this way, but you can if you want. Just until you get comfortable with it, because you don't even have to have that many materials either. I just use a lot so that I have something to work with, and if I don't need it, I don't use it. But it's best to have it than not need it. No, it's best to need it and not. I can't remember what the saying was. Anyway, no, it doesn't matter which way they go, as long as the materials are first, then the lights, and then the stuff above it. It should be fine. But talking about that, the next group in this is the lights. So I'll just sort of render out a couple of light passes inside of ZBrush, and then the next one's a depth map, shadow map, ambient occlusion, masking, and then the final one, which I always put at the top because it's easiest to get to, is a normal map. So I render out a normal map because this gives me nice lighting, overall lighting direction. I'll get into that a little bit later. So I'm going to turn all these off and come down to the bottom here. So this one, the thing I've found, right, is that you don't need to use too many different blending modes inside of Photoshop. The majority of the time I use is soft light, overlay, screen, and maybe multiply. All those other times that I'm searching through these different layers or blend modes, I'm just trying to find something interesting. I'm trying to find something that will work with the image or look good with the image. But normally I'll start with the soft light with this one, and then it's just a case of bringing down the opacity as well as bringing down the fill and just getting a nice blend. I don't know if you guys can see that in the live stream, but bringing this up and down, you can get you kind of see the way the map works, or the matte cap works on the model. And you don't want to overshoot it or burn out the image when you're doing this. It's all about fidelity, or very small tweaks, especially later on. It gets to like so many small tweaks, you forget to actually finish tweaking and finish the model or finish the image. But yeah, for this sort of first section, I'll just blitz through these real quick. This one is normally a divide. Again, we'll go through all the matte caps I use on the Orc bust later on. I'm just going to run through these ones in the meantime. I just got some chat in here saying the master splinter, best to have and not need, and need and not have. Exactly. Thank you very much. Got one from Ryan saying, hey, hello. And also Cryptic saying, good to see you too. I love the tank you're doing, by the way, Cryptic. I'd like to actually, I was going to ask if I could sort of do a texture pass on it, because I think it'd be really cool to do a texture pass in Substance Painter, but I can maybe message you and see if you're up for that sort of thing. Anyway, let's get back to it. So we'd have the divide on, and for the same thing, I'm just going to lower the opacity and fill on this. Now, a lot of people say, why do you lower the opacity and the fill? And that's because they do two different things, I think. You can lower the opacity, right, and have it lowered, but you'll still have the full-on effect of the image blaring into your eyes. So the fill, I try to lower that as well, and it just gives you that extra level to play with to get the exact sort of image you're going for, or sort of finish on the image. I'm not scared either about how it looks without shadow or ambient occlusion. Trust me, when you turn those on, it actually makes the thing look 10 times better. So don't worry about that just yet. We're just playing with these. This one is kind of like a cavity map, so I'll actually add an adjustment layer. And I always do this. I always go to the actual adjustments through the files, the Windows system up here, because I know a lot of people say, why don't you use the hotkeys, you know? But I try to do this because it shows you where to go to get things, and that's what I'm trying to teach people, you know, how to do, especially people who are more beginner stage. So I'll just grab a level, and I'm just going to try to adjust this so that it's got more white. So pulling from the right, just going to have more white and a bit more of the darker areas in the middle, like the crease areas, the cracks and stuff. Say that works. And then this one will just be like a multiply, or if you want, you can use any other thing, but I'm just going to use a multiply for this one. And then I'm just going to turn down this. This actually, yeah, this one, it's good, but it does mess with the final image if you have it too high. So it's just supposed to have like a very light touch to the overall render. And then we have this one here, which is normally a soft light, depending on what you want to, how you want to use it. You can have an overlay or a soft light, but again, if you go overlay, it's going to burn. You see how that burn is going on the forehead here with all this light, like the from the material. It's burning the overall image. So I'll probably take it to a soft light and just bring this down on either side. And don't forget, you don't have to stick with the colors that you get from the matte cap, right? You can change the matte cap colors as well. If you feel like you want to have it a bit more blue hue or red hue or green hue, you can change that just by going to the image adjustments, hue saturation, and on this slider up here, you can just change it, and you can see a slight sort of change in color there. If I bring up the matte cap again to full and put it on normal and go back to hue saturation. See, we can change the color of this, which will actually change the properties that you see on the final image, which is great. All right, so you can do that as well. And as I say, this is the reason I like using ZBrush to Photoshop rather than ZBrush to Keyshot to Photoshop, because you get a lot more control over the final image with all these matte caps, and you can, you know, sort of experiment as well. Anyway, this one is more of a, I would say this is more of like a subsurface scattering texture or material. So I would actually put this above all the others, just there, just underneath the shadow, but we'll talk about that later. We've got some other ones here. And I mentioned before, not all of these will be used, but they are nice to have. So say this is a soft light one. So we just drag these out. Just gonna change the music quick. Play this one for a few minutes. Has anyone else got any questions they'd like to ask, or just put it in the chat? You know, don't be afraid. So that one will do for that. And remember, none of these are permanent, right? None of these levels that we put in here are permanent because we haven't merged the image down yet. The last thing we do is we merge the image because we're finally done, right? These images can be left unmerged until the very end, and you can tweak them to your heart's content. This one, see, this one doesn't work very well for me because you can see it's blowing the image out with all the white and the very dark sections. It's not really working too well for me, so I think I might just not use that one and just see what this one is. See, I like this one. This one looks really cool just as it is, you know. But let's see what we can do with it. Sometimes you can even bring it down the bottom here and use it as an exclusion or difference. It's all about just going through each one of these and just seeing which one looks really good or will work really well with your image. Unfortunately, this one's not as good either. Maybe I'll just leave this one out for now. And normally this reflective one, I won't touch until later on once I got the shadows and the ambiclusion in, just because it's more of an additive. It just adds a bit of wetness to the skin or the eyes or the teeth, you know, so we don't have to worry about it just yet. So I'll just turn this one off for now. And then the BPR flat is just it's a layer that I can use to bring back the color, basically. Because once we start using all these different layers, you'll see it changes the overall color palette, right? And it dulls it a bit. So what I do normally is I use a flat color to just add that color back in. Now you can either go for an overlay, a soft light, or a color. I'm just going to go for a soft light because it just brings it back a bit, and then I can bring this down. I'm just enhancing those colors back in to the image, right? And then onto lighting. So with lighting, it's a bit different. We need to use the screen or the lighten, or you can use color dodge, but you can see with color dodge or any of these ones down here, and from color dodge down to lighter color, it's just blowing the image out too much. So it's either lighten or screen, and normally it's screen that I use. And it's at this point as well that you want to think about where your light is coming. And the best way to think about where your light is coming is to see where your shadow is on your character. So you don't want to have light and shadow on the same side. You want to have a light coming from the opposite direction of your shadow to counteract it. So if we turn on the shadow, you can see the shadow starts, or actually it's on the sort of right-hand side of them, right? So what we can do is turn this one on, create a mask, hit Control-I on the keyboard, that just inverts the mask to a black. And that just hides everything. And I'm just going to use a soft light, or soft brush. And then hitting X on the keyboard will turn it to a white or black mask. And we just come in here and we're just going to paint in some of that light that we have. And just bearing in mind that there is shadow on the opposite side, so we don't really need to go too far over this side, because this is specular light, right? It's just got it's a sort of specular highlight. Just going to take a quick question here. See what got in the chat. Well, God, hold on. Got one here from Joseph Bunkowski. Maybe you will talk about this anyway, but I'm interested in how to rotate the brush in Photoshop with hotkeys. Rotate the brush? I don't tend to rotate the brush too much. Actually, I don't think I'll rotate the brush at all. That's a good question. If anyone has the answer to how to rotate a brush in Photoshop with the hotkeys, please put it in the chat because I'd like to know that as well. Sorry. Got one from Dave Newhouse. Is Discord the place to post my abominations for you to see? Yes, it is, and I will help you as best I can with the free time that I have. I'll be able to help out and see and sort of guide you if you want on the path to a better abomination, I guess. Got one here from Master Splinter. How heavy do your files usually get in Photoshop before the file is merged? I don't know how heavy they are overall size because I don't really look at the size of the files, but I do get quite a few. I can get a lot of layers in because I'm one of those people who will put a layer even if I don't need a layer, just because I'm scared that I'm going to lose what I had before. So I constantly use loads of layers. It's not a great way to work, but it works for me. But I tend to use less of it now than I normally do. I couldn't tell you how big the files are, sorry. Got one from Dean Bray. You like the skin to look almost wet? Some skin, yeah. Some skin has some wetness, depending on what kind of character you're going for. If you're going for an amphibian or, you know, something like in the water or just coming out of the water, you want to have the wet skin look on him. If it's the teeth, then they sort of, it's the idea that he's just opened his mouth like we have here. The teeth will be wet, the eyeballs have wetness in them. There's some skin that's wet from sweat. You know, it depends on what look you're going for. Got one here from Joseph saying, for example, when you add clouds on your image, I've seen you rotate the brush sometimes. I know it's possible with the palette, but it's a bit time consuming. I think it's actually built into the brush that I have, the rotation. It's like a random rotation. So I don't get the same cloud twice when I use that brush. So that's why you'll see me put them on, take them off, put them on, take them off, put them on, take them off, because it's constantly rotating the brush and making the scale different. I got one from Aldrin saying, hi Marcus, hope your week has been well. Glad to see this compositing process. Thank you. Sorry that you might have missed the beginning, but yeah, if you become a member, you can see it again. Cool. Right, I'm going to carry on. So let's say that's. Let me just change the songs. Probably get on everyone's nerves. I gotta find new music, guys. There we go. Cool. So let's say that is one light that we have. We have multiple lights, and I typically render out multiple lights because it's best to have as many as you can. This one's kind of like a rim light, so let's turn this. Oops, sorry. So if we turn this one to screen as well, and we change the mask to black, and all we gotta do is just come around the edge here on the opposite side, again on the opposite side of the shadow, and along here. Don't paint anything that's not on the rim of your character when you're using the rim light. So don't come in here and start painting the teeth in here, because it just doesn't make sense why there would be rim light on the inside of the teeth or anywhere in here as well. You want to sort of knock that out and just have it on the edge of your character's face like that. And you can just bring down the screen for that as well, so you can bring down the opacity. You can even, just found this out a couple of days ago from watching someone else on ZBrush, you can even change the color of the light by hitting, I think it was Control U, which brings up the hue saturation. Alternatively, you can go to Image Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and clicking on the colorize, and then changing the color. That will actually change the color of your rim light. And this is great if you bring up the saturation or. Yeah, it's good. It's good for changing the sort of overall color palette of your light, basically. But we're not going to go into that just yet. We're just going to get through how I do the rest of it first. So we have, again, this one is really great because you can see It's got like nice little paw detail on here, which might be a really interesting thing to have on your character. So we can use this one as well. It can either be a screen or a lighten. I'll put a screen on this one. Control I to change the mask. And then instead of just putting light around here, we can actually fake it, because the great thing about concepting like characters and stuff is that you get to fake a lot of stuff. You don't have to worry about real physics or anything like that when you're doing a concept. Especially if it's for fun, you can just fake whatever you want on your character. Doesn't really matter, as long as it works as a good composition or good concept. So I know that we said we don't put any light here, but if we just add a little bit of specular around here and here, and on this collarbone, and maybe a little bit on the cheek here, on that horn, and a little bit on that lip, on the bottom lip. Take it away from the top lip. Yeah, that'll do. So we're trying to keep the image interesting. We're trying to sort of point the eyes. Well, this is difficult to explain. You want to make your audience look at parts of your model and be constantly interested in your final piece, but also maintaining that focal point, which is the face, right? So we have other ones here, but I'm going to leave it there for now for the lights, because we can always come back to these and change them up later. Before I go any further up into the shadows and ambient occlusion, I normally go into the normal matte cap that I have. Oh, got a question. Just 1 second, we got a question here from, oops, sorry, Hamid Salamani. I hope I said that right. Hi Marcus, could you please do mutant creature like the old ones in the future live stream? I love the mutant creatures you did in the past. Yeah, once I've done the, which one's going to finish first? I think the first one's going to be the orc bust. I think we're going to finish that one relatively soon. Once we finish that one, I can do a mutant creature next, if you like, and I'll just show you how to make something disgusting, I guess. But thank you. Yeah, so for the normal map, I use this in a pretty weird way. I don't think anyone else does this, as far as I know. So I'll go into the channels on the layers, and if you cycle through the red, green, and blue, you can see we got these nice, if you think of it as a light source rather than a normal map. So you have a light source coming from the front, which would be the blue. You have a light source coming directly down as the green, and then a light source coming from the right-hand side is left-hand side, which is the red. Now, typically, if you have the shadows on the opposite side, so this one wouldn't work very well with the red because the shadows on the opposite side. It will work for the blue, but you'll get a blown out image, right? So I typically just use the green because it's coming down, it's sort of pointing down on your model. Gives a nice little hazy effect as well. So I'm just gonna hit Control C on the keyboard. Oops. And then I'm gonna come over to lights, turn off the normal, and hit Control V. Oops, a daisy, I did that wrong. I think it's Control A, Control C. So you select it all, then you copy it, and then I'm going to hit Control V to paste it, and then come over to normal, and typically it's going to be an overlay or a soft blend, normally a soft blend, and I'm just going to bring it down a bit. Now you might think it's not done much, but if I turn this on and off, you can kind of see that the light's coming from up above, right? You can see that sort of effect that's happening on there. Yeah. Anyway, so let's say that's done. Let's say that's good for now. The depth mask, This is easy. If you have a dark background, the depth mask is going to work really well. If you have a lighter background, I wouldn't worry too much about using a depth mask. We're going to just leave this off for now because we can always come back to it. The next one is the shadow. Now, when you turn on the shadow properly, you're going to see the image start to really come to life. So if I come over here to the blends, I put it onto multiply, and I'll bring this down a bit because shadows typically aren't that strong unless you want to make it really strong. But you don't want to make your shadows ultra strong when you're using them in a layer. You can also don't want to use pure black, so you probably want to change the color by hitting Control U and maybe changing it to a more bluish hue. Hitting colorize first. So you probably want to change it to a more blue hue. Just turn down the saturation a bit, just so it's not pure black, because that's the one thing you should never really go anywhere near, and that is the pure black color when it comes to shadows, and on your image as well. The next one is the ambient occlusion, and this is basically the shadows within a shadow. So anything that's like two pieces together, if you put your fingers together or your hands together, you can see down the very center of the crack is what we would call ambient occlusion. It's not a shadow per se, it's a sort of fake shadow that's like two objects close to each other. It's difficult to explain, but it's kind of like a fake shadow, and that's kind of how I use what ambient occlusion is kind of used for. So I'll just come over to images, adjust levels, and the ambient occlusion we got from ZBrush is normally okay, but I like to bump it up a bit so we can really see the ambient occlusion. And then we just bring down the white a little bit more. So got that, and we're just gonna, before we change the blend, I'm just gonna make a duplicate of the ambient occlusion because I want to show you what you can do with that in a minute. And I'm just gonna put this to multiply, and you can see the difference it makes to your image. It really brings it to life. So we copied the ambient occlusion because we can also use ambient occlusion as a sort of saturate, a subsurface scattering technique as well. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we hit Control I on the keyboard, we invert the ambient occlusion, right? If you think of this as a mask, you now have masked all the sort of crevices and cracks, and you've got some gray hues in here as well. And this works really well for a subsurface scattering material or map. What I mean by that is if we go over to Panel and we hit Control on the keyboard and tap on one of these let's go for red. If we tap on the red by hitting Control and tap, it'll select just the white areas. Turn this off. We come above the ambient occlusion, make a new layer. And because we want subsurface scattering, which is when you put your hand up to a light, right, you'll be able to see like a hue of red, which is what we call subsurface scattering. It's kind of like the light penetrating the skin and then coming back out. It's really useful when creating realistic characters and stuff for films and whatnot, because your skin is not a solid material. Light passes through it, it absorbs it and then disperses the light. So that's what subsurface scattering is. So we're just going to, using this off red sort of orange, using the bucket tool, I'm just going to fill it in, maybe click twice if you want. And then we can come over to the blend and we can blend this just run through each blend mode until you find a nice one that works really well. I think the hard light will work well for this. And then we can make a mask. Hit Control I on the keyboard. Grab our brush, our soft brown brush. And we're just going to add, with the opacity and the scale of your brush selected at the top here as well, just very lightly come in and add some subsurface scattering to your skin. And don't forget to paint in and paint out using the X on the keyboard will just change the color from white to black. It's also a non-destructive way of working, and that's very key when you're doing concept work or any work in general, is to have a non-destructive method. So you don't want to be using the eraser brush or painting directly onto the materials here. You always want to use a mask to drive the images. Okay. And typically you just want to paint wherever there's like a very dark area, because skin is never really that dark. There will always be a bit of light that seeps through. And just remember, I'm not a perfectionist. I'm not a professional concept artist. I'm a creature character artist by trade, and everything I'm doing here is just what I've found throughout my, was it 5 years of just testing and learning from other people. So there might be other techniques that you probably know of that are better or easier or quicker, but if you really want to just make something or follow along, then by all means, carry on with this technique. But if you find a different technique, then that works for you, that's great. So let's say that that's all the subsurface scattering that we have to do. You can then come in and use the opacities if you want. I'm just going to leave it as it is. I want the skin to be quite translucent. As you can see here, it makes it look quite translucent. It's faking it, but it works. Key thing to do as well is to stay away from your model as much as possible. So step back from your model, or your concept, sorry, don't zoom in too much, especially at this early stage of setting up the materials. Once you've set up all the materials and you're happy with it, then you can go in and you can adjust things to your heart's content by going zooming in. But I typically try to stay away from zooming in too much. So now that we have all of these sort of materials that we're going to use done, we can then grab them all. So I've just selected the top layer. I'm going to hit Shift and select the bottom layer, and I'm going to put that into a folder like that. And now we can actually create composition, create the sort of final size of the image. I just got a question here from Joseph. I never understood completely so far the subsurface scatter technique, but now it's clear. So much. Oh, so thank you so much. Yeah, that's fine. Happy I could help. There's plenty of documented stuff out there about subsurface scattering. It's very easy once you know what it's all about. It's not just human skin as well. It's a candle. When you light a candle, right? This is a good example. When you light a candle, there's subsurface scattering happening because a candle is not as solid as you think. It's porous. It's sort of translucent, So that's another thing that's got subsurface scattering. And there's multiple things out there that's got subsurface. I think nearly everything has in some way some sort of subsurface scattering. Just depends on the level of subsurface that there is, basically. We got one here from Aldrin again. Regarding your keyshot workflow, do you think it would be possible to achieve a similar process with Marmoset Toolbag? I guess so. I think because Keyshot has a plugin that plugs ZBrush to Keyshot, it takes the textures with it. And then all you got to do is assign the material inside a Keyshot. For Marmoset Toolbag, I'm not sure how it works because I haven't got the latest Marmoset Toolbag and I haven't used it in ages. I'm sure there must be a button you can press that will send all your textures to Marmoset Toolbag. But then you'll have to create a specular map and all those other things to render a quality image before taking it into Photoshop. Yeah, I don't know enough about the Marmoset Toolbag pipeline for that. I have seen people use Marmoset Toolbag to render their sort of models and have good turntables and stuff, but I've been solely doing Keyshot and ZBrush for the last few years. If I was to use Marmoset, it would be to use it for showcasing a final design, like completely final with all the textures, so the subsurface scatter, the specular, the color, normal map, height map, all those maps created and then put into Marmoset Toolbag as a showcase piece because yeah, that's what I would use it for. But like I said, I haven't used Marmoset in a long time. I know there's new techniques and stuff in there. So you've got your baking maps. You can even do textures as well as sculpting some stuff, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure. If you have any other questions, just pop them in the chat. Change this bloody music. 1 second. Right. So once we're happy with the overall materials and how they look, bearing in mind we've been working on a black background for this whole time, so it's going to change up. We can always change it up later. It does look really nice in the black background. We could even keep it like that, but we're going to change it. So once we're happy with the overall look, we can then talk about or look into how we're going to finalize this composition. And like I mentioned before, having a model or composite like this or concept like this, where it's a bust, we don't want to have too much on either side as a background. We want to focus the attention on that face because we sculpted so much detail in ZBrush to do with the face. We should be focusing on the face, right? So I'm gonna squash this down. This is a crop tool, by the way. I'm just gonna squash this down. I don't want to cut off any of the model because we're going to scale the model up to fit the frame. Otherwise, we cut off the model and we've lost that little piece we might need later or something. Anyway, I'm going to hit OK. So now we have a more portrait-looking finish to our character, and then we can just scale this up. And again, I am not afraid to cut off anything that's down here because most of the stuff that I want to focus on is in the face. So don't be afraid to cut off the model to fit the frame better. And I think we should always also remember to kind of work in 3/3. I'm not going to go into how to work in thirds. Basically, it's like a grid section. It's a grid thing. I'm going to say it anyway. It's a grid thing where you have 2 lines, cutting it up into 9 spaces or 9 squares, and the central piece is where you want to put most of the stuff rather than on the outside. It's a complicated thing to explain, but essentially what you want to do is you don't want to have the face up here or down here. You want to keep it nice and central to the frame. Another good thing about the mask is that you can use it to drive the masking of your character. So I just control clicked on the RGB and I'm just going to add that as a mask on the file, on the overall file, and hit Control I. Oops, sorry. Don't have to hit Control I, just have to turn off the mask, and then that just gets rid of the background for you. I'm going to have a new layer. This will be the background layer, and for this, I normally put a gray, slightly gray background, and work my way into the darker tones or lighter tones. It's nicer to work with rather than just pure white. Pure white it hurts the eyes really. So I tend to go with a darker gray, sorry, like that. So got one here from Aldrin again. Aldrin Art 3D says, yeah, final results are probably more appropriate with Marmoset. I was just curious because I love Keyshot, but I can't retain it much for longer. So I was thinking about alternatives. Yeah, that is something, isn't it? Do you have ZBrush 2025? Because I know that they have Redshift incorporated into that, but if you don't, then there are other ways to, if you want to be a concept artist, there are other ways to do it. I only know the ways I know, unfortunately. Anyway, yeah, you let me know if you find another way to do it as well. Be interesting to see what you can come up with. So I'm just going to make a new layer, and I'm just going to work on the background now. So I'm just going to add a gradient, and I normally put a dark black to the top, from bottom to top. Oops. So we have a nice, I mean, you could also do it the way the shadows come in, so you could do it from this angle, which is probably more appropriate because we have the lights coming from the left-hand side. And then we're just going to make a new layer. And this is when I start to just throw as many layers in to the Photoshop, which is probably not going to be, probably not the best way to do it, but it's the only way I know. And you can also pick from the actual image, like color pick from the image, just so you have a nice cohesive and continuous color scheme. You don't want to have to go in here to this color swatch and trying to pick a good background color. If you have the colors on your model already, they can really help with the process. And again, you don't have to use all of it. You can sort of drag it down on the side here. Now, there's multiple ways that you can incorporate the body so that it doesn't look like you just have something that's come from ZBrush and it's got no arm or body. You can either, because nowadays I use a cloud brush just because it's quicker. I have a cloud brush here that I use. Now, we just have this mask here. We got the mask selected. You can either paint it out a little bit, just scrub out those areas where the model isn't finished, like that. Make a new layer and then incorporate. So I'm just going to color pick from the background now. Incorporate some of that gray as a cloudy, like it's coming out of the mist sort of thing. Just hides the unfinished model really. And I can do the background now. So I'm just going to color pick and just add some random clouds in the background. Like that. Maybe color pick from the model again, just so I get a lighter tone. There we are. And inside the model, again, what we want is we want the overall focus on the face, right? So what we can do is add a new mask, or add a new layer, sorry. Grab the gradient, grab the black, grab the black, and then make a gradient going from bottom to top. And this just kind of makes a gradient. It makes a gradient, right? That sort of hides anything down here that we don't want to focus the eyes on. So we always focus in this general area. And then again, like I said, we can come in here. I just to the lights. So because we want to focus on the face, we don't really need much of the light stuff coming at the bottom here. So I'm just going to paint out that area for the rim light, and this little detail that we put down here, we could just paint those out as well. So now we can see we're focusing more here, right? And if you want, you can maybe duplicate this and just see. Maybe it won't work. Put on multiply. And if at all that you think that your model, your concept is looking a bit drained of color because of what we've been doing so far, you can always go to the very bottom one, at the bottom of the stack here, and change the hue saturation or the vibrance of your character. And this is great because you can now make multiple variations of color or one concept. So if you wanted to, if the, I don't know, the director or the person in charge, the art director, comes along and says, "Oh, that looks great. Can we make it look purple?" Or then you could just use the slider to make it purple and boost the saturation, and voila, you have a purple alien now. Then you just go in and you tweak a few other things, and so that's a great way of doing things as well. Again, pretty non-destructive. But we don't want to do that with this. We just want to maybe add a little bit of orange into it and bring down the lightness a little bit. So we're going for more earthy tones with this creature rather than sort of sci-fi alien sort of stuff. The eyes, now you can go online, you can find some eyes online and use them as a and cut them out and use them in your image. For this one, I'm not going to do that. I think the sort of blinded type of milky white eyes work really well for this character. So the only thing I'll do is just add a layer and grab my trusty brush. Oops. And I'm just going to add in highlights. Like just painting a highlight by hand. Make the brush big enough. And also just fake some wet along the tear duct there. And this one will have a little bit of a white on that one there. It kind of looks like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer creature, doesn't it? Not bad. Not bad. And just use the erasure brush. I'm just gonna take a little bit off the top. There we are. So let's say that's it. That's the eyes done. Happy with it. Fine. The next thing I want to do is, I think, Joseph, you asked us earlier in the stream, you wanted to see how I use textures to bring the character to life a bit more and add that bit of detail you couldn't add inside of ZBrush. Especially if you're a concept artist, you probably wouldn't be able to add this sort of detail to your character inside ZBrush with say with timescales of projects and stuff like that if you're in the industry. So what they normally would do is they would take an image from online and they would manipulate it to fit the concept, So I got a few here that I use regularly. So if I come over here, this one here is one I use regularly. It's good for all skin. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It just makes the skin look really good, or scales or anything like that. So I'm just going to click and drag this into the scene. I'm going to drag it and scale it down like this. And I'm just going to, with the Alt button held down, I'm just going to duplicate this multiple times until it covers up the whole face. And once I've got a few down, I'll just merge these layers, and then just duplicate this one, and it just does it quicker. Now, I'm not looking for perfection, so if I do have overlapping layers, it doesn't matter at all. It's just a way of adding extra detail. So we got these sort of what we would call pores or sort of skin detail. What we can do is come over to the normals, or the blends, sorry. And I normally use either soft light or overlay for this. So I'm going to use a soft light for this one. Now it's going to look weird because it's actually sitting on the top of everything else. But as soon as you bring this below the lights, it'll start to blend in better. I'm also going to desaturate it as well. And also the last thing you want to do, because you don't want to have a perfect stamp of and see all these pixels. Doesn't look great, right? Sorry. So what you want to do is you want to go to the filters, blur, and do a bit of Gaussian blur, and that's just going to blur it a little bit, just a little bit. Doesn't have to be much, just about 0.6, 0.5, depending on how big the scale is of it. And that's just going to give it a nice little blur to it, so it doesn't look so copy paste, you know. And then we can add a mask, hit Control I on the keyboard to hide it, and then come in with a nice soft brush and paint in where you want it to be. Just got a question here, quick question from Akraf. Did you make the skin texture by hand or downloaded it? I downloaded it from the internet. What I'll do is if you're a Discord member, what I'll do tomorrow is I'll add these textures into the Discord because it's getting quite late now. So I just want to get through this quick. But what I'll do is I'll add these textures to the Discord channel so you guys can pick them up. These ones are the ones that I use a lot, so you could probably find a good use for them as well. So that's that one. Cool. So I'm just going to grab the soft brush quick and paint in these little pores. So you don't want to have it all over the model. You want to sort of pretty gradually paint in, like, think of them as freckles, right, on your character. You just want to paint them in and paint them out in key areas. Not everywhere, but just around key areas. And it doesn't have to be too hard either, too noticeable. It just adds that level of detail that sells the model better. Like skin surface detail, you know. There we are. Let's say that's number 1 done. So that's that one. I also have like metal rust and all these organic ones as well. They all work the sort of same way that you can use them on your model. I'm going to try this metal rust. Again, you don't have to use all of them. You can use just 1 or 2. Sometimes I only just use 1 because it brings it across quite well. It's quite a big image, so let's just scale this down. And I'm just going to duplicate these a few times, so 3 times, merge it. And with this one, it's a little bit more difficult to sell it because you can see these lines, right? These overlapping lines from where the image was sort of overlapping each other. So the best way to fix that is just to come over to this patch brush here, or spot heal brush, what it's called, and just use the spot healing brush. Just drag until they blend in, you know. It kind of just clones what's around it, and it just cleans those couple areas up a bit more. And this one again, you can, well, actually, before we desaturate it, you can try using it with the color or the textures of the texture. And again, this will just be a bit of surface detail, probably soft light will work for it. And this one we just want to bring down quite a bit. Don't want to have it overblowing what we already done, because you might not see it, but it's there. Even the things you can't see that's there, they're there. It just helps with the overall image. So let's say that is a pretty good model. That's a pretty good concept, right? Let's say we're happy with the way it looks. The last step that I normally take is to come over here. I'm going to put all these into a group or into a folder of its own. And I'm going to add in a new folder, and this will be the adjustments to this image. Adjustments are quite important because this is like the very final steps to wow the audience or to give it some extra life, right? So I'm just going to come over here to the adjustments, and under here we have brightness, levels, curves, and exposure. We're not going to use all of these. We're just going to use a few. So the first one I'll do is brightness, and I'll just bump the brightness up. You can even bring the contrast down if you want, so it's less dark parts of it, or up if you want. I'm just going to leave it about -1 will do. You can hit Control-I on the keyboard, grab the soft brush. Control-I is to make it so that the mask is black. And then I'm just going to paint in, because remember we want the focal point to be the face. I'm just going to paint in that face area, so there's more highlighting that area than it is highlighting what's going on down here. And we can do levels as well. Now with levels, it's a bit different with levels. I normally would just put this one on the far left to 5. This is what I used to do, and that'll be it. But I found that you can actually have a bit more fun with it if you go and use these color pickers. So for the first one, it's going to ask you what is the darkest part of your model or your image. And so you just use the color picker and pick the darkest part of your image, and it's going to try and force all the dark parts to be about as dark as that. The next one I'll do is I'll skip the middle one and I'll jump onto the lightest part. So this is one that asks you what's the lightest part of your image. And so I'll just add that. But there's a little bit of a trick here. So when it comes to picking the lightest part, because sometimes you can't really see what's the lightest part, it won't work before you do it, but after you've tapped on the lightest part, just hit Alt down and it will give you an image where it shows you where's the hottest part of your image, the whitest part of your image. And then you can just come in here and you can try to select it as best you can, the hottest part of the image. So that's the lightest part. And in the middle one is basically going to give you some really cool color effects. So you can go and you can tap around the image until you get some nice tones that you might like. So you might like a completely different color tone that you think will work better. So, let's say that this is the one I want to go for. It's got a nice tone to it, some nice greens, some nice oranges. It sort of works very well together. So we'll keep it like that. Again, you can use the sliders to slide that color in and out. The next one I'm going to do will be, I'm going to just jump down to color lookup. Color lookup is great because it kind of gives you some interesting color choices to work with. Now, before I go any further, I'm just going to put this down to the blend color. I'm just going to cycle through these, and you can see the type of effects that you can get using this. So this one looks really cool. So this will be like a crisp winter look. So it'll give you a crisp winter feeling to your model or your image. And then you got drop the blues, edgy amber, fall colors, film stock. So you get the sort of film stock looks. And you can just cycle through all these until you get to one that you really like. I actually quite like this one for this one, but I'm just going to cycle through the rest of them until I find what I like. See if there's any others. I used to use this one a lot because it's like it's Lord of the Rings vibes. If you look at the concept art and stuff like that, it's very Lord of the Rings vibe. But I think I'm going to go back up to the Kodiak one that I had up there. This one. Was it this one? No, it's this one. So This is just going to give it a nice Fuji Eterna 2050 Kodak look, I guess. Again, go ahead and try these out yourself. Try all these things out yourself. Play with these as much as you like, because you never know, you might stumble across something really cool. And then maybe if you want, you can have a photo filter as well. This is a little bit overkill. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you can just add another filter on top if you want. Sepia is normally quite good, like this one. And then I'm just going to bring the opacity down. You see, I'm trying not to overcook the image whenever I'm doing this as well. I'm always looking at it and always sort of also have a reference behind you, or a reference to the other side of the screen to try and reference your work too. And that just makes it so that you keep on track with the image and it doesn't go all crazy, really. So let's say that we're happy with that. Now I can come in here with this group. I'm going to duplicate the group, and I'm going to hit Control, Merge Group. And this is like the final steps, right? So we have the merge group. Before we go and we sharpen the image, because at the moment, we just zoom in, you can kind of see it's a little bit murky, it's a little bit, strange looking, blurry. So you kind of want to sharpen the image a little bit. Before we do that, we just want to crop it and make sure that anything on the outside is gone. So we don't get these weird white lines when you do the sharpen in a minute. So I'm just going to go Filter, Sharpen, Smart Sharpen, and it's going to give you a little bit of a preview of what's going on. So you can see here, if I turn this off and turn it on, it just sharpens, crunches that sharpness a little bit more. You probably can't see on this image, but I'll move this out of the way and we zoom in. You can see it just brings everything together a little bit more, sharpens everything, makes it look a bit more crisp, a bit more HD, if you know what I mean. So just going to hit OK. And then I'm just going to duplicate this one, go to Filter, add a blur to it. So I'm going to add a motion blur. So this is great if you want to make it seem that your character is in motion, or things are in motion, so it's not just a static image. So I'm just going to add a motion blur quick, and we can kind of see from this preview the way the motion's going to be. And it might be a bit too much. If you think it's too much, it might be a bit too much. So we just want to add a little bit. So I just put 4 down instead of 8. And you can kind of see there's a little bit of motion blur on the ears and around the image, which is great. I'm going to make a new mask. Control I on the keyboard. And grab my round brush, soft round brush. Make it bigger. And essentially, we can just paint in that mask all around the bottom here, because we're not focusing on this area at all. And maybe just a little bit of blur around the edge, or around one of the edges, like that. So you can see, if I turn that on and off, you can kind of see a little bit of blur going on, which is great. Yep. And then we just duplicate this one again, the sharpened version. Go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. Yeah, okay. Come down to the blend, go to Soft Light, and drag this down. I normally drag it down to about 21 for the opacity, and about 25, or roughly 25, 21 for the fill. And what this does is it just adds a bit of grainy noise to your image. You can see all these little grainy pixels. It just adds a little bit of grain, so it's not so clean. And it's kind of like the chef's kiss to the final piece. And the last thing I'll do is just add my logo, and I'm done. And that's how I composite from ZBrush to Photoshop. That's the way that I would composite. Now, of course, this has just been very quickly done. I can already see some issues that I've done or made which I could fix, which is there's a light source on the nostril here, which I could take out. There's some extra pieces in here that I could fix. Maybe this highlights a bit too much. But essentially, that's how you do it. And also, I could add some more detail in some areas, key areas, to really bring it to life. But this has just been a very quick way to show you how to composite using Photoshop, your ZBrush model. So if you guys got any questions, I'll take some questions before the end of this stream. It's already 1 hour 33, so it'll take about 10 minutes for any questions you might have. And then I'll do some shilling, and then we can end the stream. One from Joseph's just saying, thank you for this. My pleasure. I hope you guys have learned a little bit more about how composition is key when you're trying to sell your image or your idea, because you can fall into sort of bad compositing territory, and yeah, it just won't look as professional. But it's a learning curve. Everything is a learning curve, you know. It's going to take time to learn this sort of technique. I got one here from Aldrin Art saying, always such a nice result. How did you develop these methods and techniques? Just practice, really. I just one day said to myself, I'm going to try and do a sculpt as well as a composite a day. And then I just started to do it. I looked up some ways of doing it inside of Photoshop and ZBrush, or ZBrush and Photoshop, and took some ideas from other artists, and then just started to do my own techniques. It takes a long time. I mean, this is just scratching the surface of the things you can do with your own designs. So yeah, I mean, it's very calming as well. It's very fun to do. But yeah, took me a while. One here from Ryan saying, great video. Thanks for revealing how the sausage is made. Well, you're welcome. One here from Dave Newhouse. What size document do you usually render out from ZBrush? Good question. I would just render out 1920 by 1080. That's what this one was done. Obviously, now I've changed it, so when it's a portrait, it's flipped, so it's then 1080 by 1920 instead of 1920 by 1080. It depends on the pixel density that you want to get out of your image as well. If you're doing a poster, you probably want as much pixel density as possible, so you probably want a bigger sort of ratio. But if you're doing just a quick concept, anything like 1920 by 1080, I mean, this is 1920 by 1080, and it looks all right. This is, this will sell to a what do you call it, art director or to, for your folder piece. So got one here from Joseph saying, like Dr. Strange said, with learn and practice for years. Yeah, exactly. Aldrin says, wish I could do meditating process. Currently doing retort. Oh, yeah. Topology is not fun, unfortunately. But we all have to go through it as an artist, as 3D artist. You all have to go through topology. Once you get the hang of it, it can be quite quick, and then you'll find that you can just buy a already retopoed model and project your character, unless it's something else entirely. But there's definitely shortcut techniques these days to work with. But I think you should learn retopology. It is key for 3D. I got one from Akref saying, thank you so much, Marcus. That's cool. Thank you. Yeah. any way I can help. Cool. So, just gonna do a bit of shilling, and then I think I'm gonna get to bed because it is, what is the time? It's 10 o'clock here in good old Blighty, and I have the gym in the morning to get to. So let's do some quick shilling. If you have any questions whilst I do these shillings, I'll answer them before the end of the stream. Oops. So get your questions in quick. Right. So this has been Photoshop live stream on Thursdays, 8:30 to 9:30. This has been a sort of break away from the normal process. But next week we'll be back on the orc bust and try to get as much done on that as possible. I thought we could just take a break from the whole ZBrush side, so I could show you how to do the Photoshop side. And it was asked for quite a lot, so yeah. If you want, you can become a member, and you can grab for $4.99. You can see all the past live streams as well as the tutorial live streams that I have in my playlists, which are great, and you can catch up with the dragon tutorial that we're doing at the moment as well, which is me showing you how to sculpt the dragon from dragon heart from start to finish and how I go about doing it. And you can also become a member, a Patreon member, sorry, and you can get your hands on new tutorials, more videos, and brushes, and money off on my online stores, and models. There's a lot more on the Patreon than there is on the YouTube membership. And of course, like I mentioned, my online stores. You can grab tutorials, brushes, and more with over 350 5-star ratings on ArtStation alone. They are pretty good, if I don't say so myself. And I'm trying to, make more content as well for future. So keep an eye out on those. Also, there's a 30% discount on ZBrush at the moment. So if you want, you can get 30% off at the checkout, and as soon as you go to the checkout, just take 30% off. Cool. And lastly, I just want to thank my YouTube members, Nitsia Kraft, the Cool Beans podcast, Mateo Selek, Jace Burgoyne, Artza, Dave Newhouse, and a new one, Ulpanatif 35. I hope I said that right. And also Joseph Bankowski, who is now a 1-month member to my channel. Thank you very much for being my 1-month member so far. I hope everyone else stays on as well. And lastly, my Patreons. Tier 3, Aaron Todman, Ganesh, Robert Backerman, Owen Vandermine, Wayne, and Fernando. This is going to be great. Fernando Cisnoras Pazos. I hope I said that right. I'm so sorry if I didn't. Also, all my tier 2. I won't go through all those. There's quite a few there, but all my tier 2 as well. Thank you very much as well. I'm just going to check my comments one more time. One here from Joseph just saying, have a good night and have a great weekend. See you on Monday. Yep. With that, guys, I want to thank you for joining me tonight. And please have a great weekend and keep learning, keep creating, and keep inspiring others, I guess. Thanks a lot, guys. I'm just going to turn this music off because it's getting on my nerves. And I'll see you on Monday. Take care. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in more exclusive content and want to support my work further, then please check out my Patreon page at MLW_creative for more. Also, view past live streams you might have missed in Tier 3 tutorial support, where I will be archiving future streams moving forward. If you are interested in other full-length tutorials, brushes, and models, then check out my online stores for more useful content. I would also like to thank all my subscribers and patrons for supporting me for this long. Again, thanks for watching and stay safe.